Story time about how my husband ran away with his brother's wife on their wedding day. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sent to me on Instagram. My husband has been a serial cheater for the 5 years that we've been married. He started cheating on me 2 weeks after we got married. And no, he never bothered to hide any of it. Anytime I found out about an affair, I would ask him and he would be honest and tell me that yes, he was having an affair, but that he would end it. But of course I knew that once a cheater, always a cheater. So I never ever trusted him after that. I wanted to even the playing field, so I decided to have my own affairs. You see, I wanted to give him a taste of his own medicine so that he could see what it felt like. And he actually got psychotic when he found out that I cheated on him the first time. He even locked me in a room for 5 hours and questioned me. I told him that if he was going to cheat on me, then I was definitely going to cheat on him too. I know that this is incredibly toxic, but it was the only thing that I could think of to make him change his ways. That's when he finally decided that he would try to stay faithful to me for as long as he possibly could. But what do you know, 2 weeks later, he was already cheating on me again. He had a really rowdy group of friends and they would always go out to bars, so this is how he met these women. Of course, he'd tell them that he was single and these girls had no idea that he was married. So it's not like I could get mad at them. My husband is close to his brother and they would always hang out. When his brother got engaged and he met his fiance, I could tell that my husband was eyeing her from head to toe. That's when I told him that he needed to stay away from her, not only for me, but for his brother. And he swore that he would never ever do that to his own brother. But he could definitely do it to his wife, of course. We would see his brother and his fiance all the time. We would have dinners together, and that's when I started noticing that she was also staring at my husband. I would catch them constantly looking at each other. Eventually, I told my husband's brother, my brother-in-law, about the concerns I had of his fiance with my husband. He laughed and even actually got mad at me for suggesting such a thing. I told him that he would regret it if he didn't take action now. A few weeks before the wedding, my husband started acting really strange. He started going out every single night. He wouldn't tell me where he would go and he would leave his phone in the house. Sometimes he'd come back the following morning. A few days before the wedding, I decided to confront him about it. I knew that I didn't want to stress him out before the wedding, but at the same time, I couldn't live like this. I had this worried, sick feeling in my stomach every single night and I would barely sleep knowing that he was out doing God knows what. When I asked him what was going on, he told me that I was overreacting and that he was just playing poker with his friends at his friend's house. I told him to call his friend on speaker so that he could confirm his story. That's when he threw a tantrum. He started slamming doors and cabinets in the kitchen, telling me that I was overreacting and that I needed to let him live his life. And he even mentioned divorce for the first time ever. He said he didn't want to be tied down to such a jealous woman. That's when I broke. I literally pulled out a list of all the women that he had cheated on me, the ones that I knew of. And I told him that he had broken my heart over 10 times that I knew of. And that I knew he would never stop and that the only thing that was fair for me was to at least have him be honest. That's when he hugged me and started to cry. And that was the first time I had seen him show any emotion towards my pain. He began to apologize and told me that he never meant to hurt me that way. We hugged and we just watched a movie and everything was back to normal. But I knew that nothing was back to normal and that he was hiding something. Finally, the day of the wedding comes and he is stressed. From the moment he woke up, he was pacing in the house, sweating. He even had 4 cups of coffee. I asked him what was wrong and he said that he was just nervous for his brother. We finally head to the church where everyone is already waiting. And when we get there, the first thing I see is the bride. She's standing outside the church with the suitcase. Without even turning to look at me, my husband tells me to get out of the car quickly. I asked him what was going on and he opened the door and pushed me out. That's when the bride jumps into the car with her suitcase and her wedding dress. And he drove off as fast as he could. I kept yelling at the top of my lungs. Of course, the entire family runs out of the church to see what's happening. That's when my mother-in-law told me that the wedding had already happened, but we had arrived late. And that right after they were married, the bride took the groom aside and told her that she didn't want to be with him. Of course, he got really upset and they got into a full blown-out fight in front of everyone. When he asked her where she was going, she said she had a ride prepared. She grabbed her suitcase and apparently walked out, and that's when my husband and I pulled up. The groom and I were absolutely devastated. I kept calling my husband and he kept calling his wife. But of course, they both ignored us. My parents-in-law were so upset that they even called the police to report his car stolen. This was in the hopes that they would at least find their car. But unfortunately, nobody found the car on the streets. This led us to believe that they were probably hauled up at some hotel. This is when I remembered that my husband really liked this one hotel that was by his job. He always told me that he would go there for drinks with his friends. So my family-in-law and I show up. And as soon as we get to the hotel, I see my husband and his now girlfriend having lunch in the restaurant at the hotel. Of course, we confronted them. We were all yelling at the top of our lungs and the hotel kicked us out. Finally, my father-in-law was able to talk some sense into my husband and make him realize what he had done. Not only had he ruined our marriage, but his brother's future as well. His brother was beside himself, so depressed and kept crying. And my mother-in-law had to take a sedative in order to calm down. My husband came to his senses and told his girlfriend that what they did was wrong. He looked at me and begged me for forgiveness, but of course, I didn't speak a word to him. My now sister-in-law / my husband's girlfriend, she decided to head straight to the airport and went back to her parents. It's been a few weeks now and my brother-in-law took her back. I still haven't forgiven my husband, but we're still living in the same house. I don't know what to do.
Am I the asshole for asking my roommate to spend less time with her husband and more time home? I, 21 female, moved in with my roommate, 27 female, at the beginning of the year after I answered her ad on Facebook. Originally, her husband also lived with her and they were both working on finishing their masters, but COVID caused a setback. He received a job opportunity, so they decided she would stay and finish while he went ahead and started his career. At first, I was nervous to room with someone who was older and also married. But we actually hit it off really well and had a lot of things in common. After 2 months, I considered her my best friend. Even though we were online last year, she didn't see her husband very often and I could tell she was having a hard time with it, but she said rooming with me reminded her of her old college days. I expected this semester would be like last semester, but she ended up going home to her husband a lot. She'd be gone for 2 weeks at a time and mostly only come back for a week. It was really lonely and to be honest, it felt unfair because I signed on to have a roommate. I mentioned how often she was gone and she said, well, you knew I was married before you signed on. I tried to compromise with her and suggested she could at least spend 2 weeks here and 2 weeks with her husband. She got uncomfortable and refused to continue the conversation. Later, I asked her if she thought about what I said and she said no. I suggested she ask her husband for a second opinion and she said it would worry him and give him the wrong impression of our relationship.
Storytime about when I messed up visiting a Nazi concentration camp. A few years ago, my uncle invited my friend and myself along to a trip to Poland. He was planning on visiting the Auschwitz Memorial Museum and the concentration camp. I said yes because I felt it was important for me to learn about the details of what went on. I was still quite young and had only learned more general information about the war and the camps, never really bothered to do my own research. You know how it goes. Let me set the scene a little here. The morning of, I had arrived and we were all ready to go. I was unsure of the weather. It was hot and humid, but it would likely rain later and cool down a bit. My friend looks at me and goes, "Are you gonna wear that?" And I said yes, thinking that this shirt was probably warm enough in case it got colder, so I won't even need to bring a jacket. Alright then, off we go. We get to the first camp and the tour begins. It was fascinating and horrifying, but I suppose that is to be expected. As our group makes its way through the camp, I'm surprised by how much information is completely new to me, and how much worse it is than I'd initially learned. At some point, we go into the building where they showcase the suitcases, shoes, hair, things like that. I think we're about half an hour, maybe more, into the tour, which would take a few hours total. I stay close by the tour guide so that I can hear him better. The guide then leads us to a room where they showcase the prisoner uniforms. It was at this point that I realized I fucked up. I'm standing next to the tour guide and the prisoner uniforms, absolutely mortified. The shirt I was wearing looked exactly like the prisoner uniforms. I had no idea that was what my friend was trying to warn me about, with bleach blonde hair and blue eyes to boot. When we get outside, I asked why no one said anything before we left. My friend said she did, so she figured I knew and was trying to make some kind of statement. Hadn't I ever seen the boy in the striped pajamas? I hadn't, nor any type of other media that showed the uniforms or details of prisoner life. Somehow I managed 18 years or so avoiding the specific detail that would come back to bite me. I was stuck feeling like an asshole for the rest of the day.
Am I the a-hole for not wanting to do Thanksgiving dinner at my parents without my wife? I, 30 male, feel stupid for even asking. My sister, 29, and my wife, 34 female, did not have the best history. Before we met, my wife was my sister's landlady, and she was renting the room at the back of my wife's house 6 years ago. She got evicted less than 4 months after moving in, because my sister did not pay her rent at all. Then she was taken to court for damages that costed way more than she put down on a security deposit. My sister did end up having to pay, but basically hated my wife for this. We met after this all went down, and I went to go pick up my sister's stuff she left behind that my wife was decent enough to not have thrown out yet. We started chatting and really hit it off. Started dating. A year and a half later, she got pregnant with our son. Now we are happily married, but my sister never took it well. We weren't this close before all this, but after becoming a traitor in her eyes, we didn't talk much. She hasn't even met my son, who's 3. My parents are really trying to push for us all to have a family Thanksgiving at their place. My sister never wanted to go because I'd be there with my wife, and she didn't want to see me. My parents never pushed it before because they didn't think my sister was being fair, considering the issues she has with my wife for all things she did herself. This year, they feel different though, since my sister broke up with her boyfriend of 6 years, and it's her first holiday without him. She, however, doesn't want to see my son or wife, so that's why they're asking if they'd be left at home. My wife doesn't have any other family, and I don't want her and my son missing out because my sister doesn't want them there. It's not a problem for me to miss out on dinner with my wife so my sister could have the company. So I'm just staying home with my own family. My sister is blowing it out of proportion because she wants me there, but I'm being an a-hole because she wants the whole family there. Parents are taking her side here because it's been a difficult year losing her boyfriend and job, so she just wants one family dinner for Thanksgiving. I get it, it's been tough for her, but I'm just having a hard time seeing how it's selfish or being inconsiderate to not want to exclude my family.
Hi guys, thank you for watching. I love you guys so much. Please like and subscribe to see more great videos. See you again.